So without much further ado, I'd love to welcome in Paul Chek.
Hey there, Paul, can you hear us? Bear with us, folks. This is very difficult. Paul, can you hear us?
We need to share the screen.
Paul,
Well, we can hear him.
say hi to AUREA.
Make host. Bear with the technical challenges, folks.
I can't hear it. I think you guys got me muted because I can't hear you.
Oh, we can't hear it.
Paul,
Hey,
can you hear us?
Okay, ready to share the screen?
Yes, sir. You can hear us, yes?
Yeah, I hear you now. Great.
All right, man. Good to see you again. You are live in front of AUREA. We got thousands of people on live stream. We got an amazing crew of people here ready to receive the epic wisdom that you've collected. It is a tremendous joy and pleasure and honor to be sitting here with you. We've got your screen sharing now, the Life Alchemy Master Sheet. If you can, I don't know if that's your background. There we go. Welcome to Spirit Gym. All right, everybody, put your hands together for the incredible Paul Chek. This is going to be an amazing ride through the universe of wisdom. You're going to emerge transformed, enlightened, and inspired. Paul, please take it away. Thank you so much.
Hey, welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. Welcome to Spirit Gym, by the way, your guide to more love, life, and freedom. This is an overview of my new book, which is going to come out soon, and it's a very big book. So I'm going to give you the best overview I can in 90 minutes. So what is Spirit Gym? Well, Spirit Gym represents existence itself. Though central to all of our lives, the origins of God, love, consciousness, soul, mind, existence, life, space, time, the universe, nature, and man remain an eternal mystery. There is no objective consensus amongst scientists, theologians, mystics, nor philosophers regarding these issues. Only theories, beliefs, and personal experiences. There are some 37 competing theories of everything today. Therefore, myth becomes the chalice that holds our facts and beliefs within which they constantly transform as you transform. So here's an overview of Spirit Gym from my book. I'd like to say thank you to my artist, Vicky Dye. She's amazing, as you'll see. And in the image here on the left, you can see that I have based Spirit Gym on what is called the infinite spiral staircase, based on the concept of scientist Chris Hardy, which I found in my own meditative and shamanic explorations to be exactly not only what I found, but what I painted before finding scientific research to back it. Now, Spirit Gym is far bigger than just the earth. A lot of people's consciousness is earth-based, but Nikolai Semyonovich Kardashev was a scientist in Russia, an astrophysicist, director of physical and mathematical sciences, and deputy director of the Aerospace Center of the P.N. Lebedev University, Physical University for Russian Sciences at the Academy of Sciences in Moscow. And his model has since been expanded beyond his three original types of civilizations to those expected to exist by Michio Kaku, Carl Sagan, and many others, such as Dr. Stephen Greer. So here in my model, you see out here, this is where Earth is. We're a type 0 civilization. And then as you get closer to source, and this represents source or 0, which we'll expand on as we go, these civilizations get more evolved. So let me share what these experts have identified as classifications for the different civilizations. Humanity is a civilization that's, as you know, having a hard time just managing their affairs with themselves and the effective use of energy and almost everything, which makes it quite an interesting Spirit Gym. A type 1 civilization is capable of controlling the energy of its entire planet. So there's a type 1. Type 2 is capable of controlling the entire energy of its host star and travels through the solar system. Type 3 are capable of controlling the energy at the scale of its entire host galaxy. Type 4 is capable of hosting energy at the scale of the universe and creates galaxies and can manipulate space-time. Type 5 are capable of using energy at the scale of the multiverse and can travel to parallel universes or simulate universes. And type 6 are civilizations that exist beyond space-time or higher dimensions, and they can create or destroy multiverses. So the purpose of showing you this is that Spirit Gym is really vast. It's vast because source is unimaginably vast, as we will explore. So as we evolve, we can evolve into these higher civilizations, and we can learn to be more and more of an expression of source. So what creates Spirit Gym? Well, source is unconditional love. Most of you'd be aware that many scriptures of many religions speak of God as love. The highest form of love is unconditional love. Mathematically, the only symbol we can use for that which has no conditions is zero. So zero expresses itself as infinity. The implicate source of zero, or that which is no thing, would be what David Bohm called the implicate order. Infinity as an expression of would be the explicate order, which is anything that is created at any dimension conceivable. Source, the infinite, creates infinite, meaning it creates in the finite, or there would be no way to identify anything, expressing itself as the one. So this is my diagram of the one. Here you see I, the individual, or you, the individual, and we as individuals or any sentient beings in the universe or in existence or Spirit Gym are creating together. So the implicate is the dreaming nature. And here we see ourselves expressing ourselves in explicate form. And we all work together as co-creators, and we create the world. Everything in the universe is spinning. So it's not only the world, but it's the world. And we're all dreaming together in Spirit Gym. And I will get into this more as we go. So the question I have for all of you is, if you had the ability to be no thing and everything, what would you be? If you had the ability to be no thing, yet everything, what would you be? If you had infinite power, infinite energy, infinite information, infinite speed, infinite processing power, and were all knowing, what could you create? What limitations would you have other than the limitations you created if you were an unconditionally loving source? Would you have a beginning or an end? How much time would you have? How many dimensions could you create? How many universes could you create? How many different beings could you create as expressions of yourself? i.e., you see it's in caps because this is source, or some people call it God creating. So it's the only thing that can create is ultimately source, and all co-creators or sentient beings in existence are expressions of source. So the question is, if you were source itself, how many different beings could you create as expressions of yourself? So when we look at what creates Spirit Gym, we're looking at unconditional love, which is dreaming and creating conditions so that it can experience and love itself unconditionally. When my students say to me, if God is unconditional love, then how does anything get here? I meditated on that for quite some time, and what I got back from Source was, I create conditions so that I can love myself unconditionally. So here you see the O of love, as I'll get into, stands for pure potential. It's the vertical dimension, which is out of time, it's eternity, but it creates within the horizontal dimension in which we have conditions as represented by the Tai Chi symbol, representing subject, object relationship, or mind itself. Now, the book Spirit Gym is based on 10 principles for creating more love, life, and freedom. And I use this image I created from my studies of alchemy on the left. The alchemists throughout antiquity said that their work was to take the divided self, the separate ego soul duality, and through the work of spiritual development, i.e. alchemy, to unify them as one. Most of you will know from your own life experience that the ego's capacity to really guide us is quite limited, and we're often at a battle with ourselves, trying to figure out who and what we are and what we really want. But through the practice of legitimate spiritual development, we merge the ego and the soul, and then there's only one being guiding the horse, and the horse, or life itself, responds to us without confusion. So the 10 principles that I feel we all need to understand to live and love fully and create the life we want is what source really is, which in my conception and my life's research is zero, or unconditional love. Myth is actually origin, because zero, or source, is a non-duality and it comes before mind. So thinking is the principle of the two. Unity is the marriage of the implicate, the empty, and the explicate, the expression of, to create the one, which I just shared with you. The three represents the Holy Trinity, the soul, the three primary choices we have, and the three primary hormones that keep us alive. 4 in my system represents the 4 aspects of Om, the 4 elements of embodiment, and the 4 doctors that we all need to pay attention to in order to have effective core values and live and love fully. 5 represents the antithesis in process and the 5 program design factors we all need to be aware of. 6 represents the 6 foundation principles that we all need to be aware of and live by, which is nutrition, hydration, sleep, breathing, thinking, and movement. 7 represents source as the soul through the 7 chakras, or energy fields, where the implicate of ourselves invests itself into and manifests the explicate physical expression that we know of as our body. 8 represents the principle of self-reflection and introspection. 9 represents achieving a new level of awareness in our spiritual development. And 10 represents achieving a new level of being, or a higher level of consciousness, or from a consciousness perspective, a higher structure stage of conscious development. The song by the Eagles, Welcome to Hotel California, is a very good, beautiful description of what really goes on in Spirit Gym. And I love the last stanza, if you will. The last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax, said the nightman. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And I think that's quite a story of the soul right there for anyone that's really spent their life investigating the soul and deep in spiritual practices like I have. There is a way out, and I will show you what the way out is. Spirit Gym is the infinite dream of source within which there are an infinite number of spirit gyms, including yours and mine. Each personal spirit gym is like a room in Hotel California. So to be clear, what I mean by that is you may have a hard Orthodox belief in Christianity, and I could be a Orthodox Muslim or an atheist or any number of infinite themes, all of which are true. And since God is unconditional love, the answer is yes to all of them. So the beauty of Spirit Gym is that it's like an infinite hotel in which each one of us lives in and creates our own spirit gym all of which are a means by which we grow and learn and evolve until we identify the truth of who and what we are. And that is the journey of Spirit Gym. And it is, as I will show you, our beliefs that create the equipment in Spirit Gym. The ultimate goal of life in Spirit Gym is the conscious realization of who and what you really are, and to love all unconditionally. The only way out is the only way in. You came from unconditional love, and to get back to that, you must evolve. And that is the process of evolution. And something my soul taught me, I would like to share with you. If you look at the word evolution and read it backwards, it says, know it you love, which means as we evolve and grow, we are no longer biased or polarized. There's not a specific person we love more or less, a specific place we love more or less, or a specific thing. Which reminds me of the first principle of Sufism, which is quite beautiful. The first principle of Sufism says, there is no God but God. I worship everything and everyone. And in that first principle of Sufism, you have a perfect description of evolution and its intention, the journey through polarity, separation, division, and illusion, to finally realizing it's all source, it's all God. So the question I would like to ask all of you is, what is it that you love? And what is it that you don't love? When you identify what you love and what you don't love, you've identified the key polarities that produce the necessary resistance for the growth of consciousness in Spirit Gym. And without polarity, there can be no consciousness. You can't know north without south, he without she, east without west, up without down, inside without outside. Polarity is essential to the development of consciousness. So in our exploration of what is Spirit Gym, we must remember that we do not perceive reality as it is, but as we are. So when it comes to being unconditional love, I'd like to offer you a contemplative meditation. If your core essence is unconditional love, what conditions have you created to recognize and love yourself? What is your story? Your myth? And here you see my example of a cage created as our own shadow. And if you look at religion, you'll see that there is rules and restrictions on almost everything, including dance, clothing, body. There's laws. We got issues with money. We got God beliefs. We've got drug issues. We've got expectations, sexual urges. We have love that may be codependent and unhealthy, or potentially unconditionally loving. We have issues about food restriction and food control, and we've got issues about music. And these are just a few of the ways we put equipment in our Spirit Gym to add resistance, so that the unconditional can identify itself in conditions and learn to live and love more fully and grow in Spirit Gym. So with the realization that dreaming comes well before mind and creation, and dreaming is ultimately the source of myth. Nobody just conjures up a myth. Myths are ushered in by great artists, poets, mystics, people that have deep intuitive access to the divine. So what is myth? Myth is a story that tells itself, according to one of the world's leading experts on myth, James Carse, who I had the great fortune of interviewing on my podcast shortly before he died. And it was a phenomenal interview. But James Carse tells us that myth is a story that tells itself. And I think that's a deep meditation. A story that tells itself. Oh, great spirit. Myth as an attempt to explain the unexplainable. A myth is something that never happened, but is happening all the time. God. If God is unconditional love, by definitions, to happen would be a condition. Therefore, paradoxically, God never happened, but is happening all the time. The origin of the universe, the Big Bang, well, that theory is extremely well proven to be wrong. And we'd have to ask ourselves, what caused it? How about the continuous bang, as Itzhak Bentov taught us? Birth and death. We think that we're born, but if you do deep explorations like I have and speak to people on the other side, they will tell you that being born in this dimension requires a death in the other side, on the other side. So the question is, are we ever born or do we ever die? From what I've learned from my spiritual investigations, life and death are just the names of two halves of a circle. Our future or your future, has it ever happened? The future is like a horizon. No matter how fast you run or how fast you fly, you can never touch it. So the future, paradoxically, is happening all the time, but never happened. Love. Are conditions necessary illusions? Because if source is unconditional love, then that's the highest truth. So what we think of as love is actually potentially a very important illusion. Your soul. Only God can give a soul, and if God is unconditional love, then the nature of your soul must be unconditional love, and that which is unconditional, paradoxically, never happened, but we all know it's happening all the time. Your story, is it nonfiction, fiction, or an ever-changing combination of both? These are very important questions that very few people spend the time to meditate on and get clear on. And if you don't, I can assure you, you'll create more pain in your life than you will if you get the answers to these questions, which is the purpose of our exploration of Spirit Gym. There are 4 sources of personal myths: personal history sources, biological sources, cultural sources, and transpersonal sources, according to Stanley Krippner, one of the world's leading experts in mythology. Notice that 3 of the 4 sources of personal myth are imaginal, subjective. Only the biological sources have objective qualities. But if we go back to the one I showed you earlier, the implicate order, which is immeasurable and unknowable, creates the objective order, and the implicate order is imaginal. And the explicate order is where we experience what we imagine. When it comes to the origins of life, the universe, or human origins, there is no agreement among scientists in any field, nor any unified agreement between fields. This is true of theoretical and objective material branches of science. Spirit Gym is built on the premise that what is true or real for anyone produces their reality, and that all stories provide experiences that facilitate the evolution of consciousness. One of my favorite origin myths, which I have not been able to identify an author for, but I've searched for years, is the Chinese myth of the dragon. I had my artist create this image to encapsulate the myth, and I'm going to share it with you because I think it's one of the most important origin myths I've ever studied out of the hundreds that I have studied. And what's beautiful, like Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, it's quite succinct and potent. So let's have a look. The myth says the dragon has a favorite hobby, which is breathing universes into existence. Each new universe is created of two dragons, a female named Yin and a male named Yang. Each time the dragon creates a new universe, the dragon tells its children, you can rest from managing your universe when the two of you can get along. So, as a meditation on the myth of the dragon, if you don't think myth is real, consider yourself as your own universe and ask yourself, what happens when these two dragons or forces within me are not in harmony? What happens when these two forces, the male and the female, are not in harmony? Do you experience physical disharmony, emotional disharmony, mental disharmony, and the spiritual? Do you experience limitation or greater connection to self, people, places, and things in Spirit Gym? So once again, the question is, when the two forces that create all of existence, that live within you and create you, are not in harmony, do you experience physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual disharmony and greater limitation? I think it only takes a little common sense to know the answer is yes. The more out of balance we are, or the world is, the more limitation, pain, sadness, and death we experience. Now, when it comes to understanding myth, we also need to remember the fact that consciousness has to have polarity. Source consciousness is unconditional, which is why source can be aware of any condition within itself. As Ken Wilber taught us, spirit unfolds within these four quadrants. On the left, we have the implicate of ourselves, and on the right, we have the explicate. The upper left quadrant is your inner self, soul, mind, beliefs, choices, your story, archetypes, myth. That's your personal interior. We also have a collective interior, whether it be family, society, culture, or the world, where we have soul groups, my people versus your people. And that's the cast and the crew of the movie that we're all in, or the dream. And that's where we have myth collisions. The inner aspect of yourself expresses itself as the actor playing a role in the myth of life, love, and Spirit Gym, which gives us a body, our persona, and it's where we choose to act or react to situations. So notice here is water systems, education systems, anything that's a system is in the collective exterior, places, home, and its. So here we have Ken Wilber's I, we, it concept. And here we have us as an actor. Here is our cast and crew in our own myth or story. And this is where we all act it out in Spirit Gym. The polarities of consciousness are here represented in the biblical conception of Jesus, representing light, and the positive polarity of the fanatic, the righteous, proselytizing, and illusion. And if we go in counterbalance, the good of Jesus is counterbalanced by Satan. So where we had light with Jesus, we have shadow. Where we had fanatic, we have lunatic. Where we have righteous, we have criminal. Where we proselytize as evil, we capture. And where we have illusions, we have delusions. And Jung identified this long ago. And he said when the church created Jesus, he cast a light so bright, they had to create Satan to counterbalance him, because the net source is zero. God is zero. So everything ultimately becomes zero, as has been demonstrated by Paul Dirac and many other great physicists. So the question is, without your story, who are you? If source is unconditional love, the answer to your conscious or unconscious desires is always yes. Be careful what you pray for, and remember that thoughts are prayers. To say no would be to create a condition And since God is unconditional love, the answer must always be yes. So it's quite a step into adulthood to realize who is the primary creator of the experiences of your life. If you don't like what's happening in your life, look carefully at what you are creating unconsciously. When you're feeling stuck in life, not healing or growing, or lack a clear vision, it is wise to carefully analyze the story we tell ourselves and consider rewriting it based on a clear vision of who we choose to be, who our people are, and the values we choose to live. So the question is not only what values are you willing to live for, but what values are we willing to die for? COVID certainly has been a very good chance to evaluate that, consciously or unconsciously. Sadly, many had to figure that out unconsciously. Your myth is either creating bondage or freedom. So when it comes to bondage or freedom, we must look to Carl Jung's wisdom once again, who said all children are tasked with the unfinished business of their parents' lives. Parental and cultural programming creates our shadow and provides resistance in Spirit Gym to offer us conscious, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual growth, which gives us evolution and self-realization as the end product. This is the work of love. No matter how much you think you love somebody, anybody that's ever been in a relationship, a committed relationship, knows that the work of love is very real. Addiction, which is a compensation for stress or a lack of love in one's life, is what I refer to from my own life experience and work with countless numbers of addicts as any repeated behavior that does not produce the results you want. My research, working with many, many addicts, has found that all addictions are desperate attempts to find safe love. Remember, a bottle or a cigarette never complains about how you kiss it. Addictions often give people the best experience of unconditional love that they can find, without which many would commit suicide, sadly. And I know all about that. My brother committed suicide. Angeles Arian traveled the world for 10 years, went to, I believe, over 100 countries, looking to the elders and the wise people and the doctors and therapists to identify what caused addiction. And after 10 years of research, she found 4 common denominators that lead to addiction: intensity, focusing on what's wrong, perfectionism, and the need to know. So when we're looking at our myth and asking ourselves, is it creating bondage or freedom? There are questions for cultivating awareness for greater freedom and well-being that we need to explore. Is the level of intensity, or my level of intensity, skillful and helpful in my relationships with myself and others? In other words, have I lost my sense of humor? Am I so focused on an objective that I don't have time to connect to myself or others? Am I easily triggered? Do I have to do everything with such intensity that I commonly hurt myself? Is focusing on what's wrong creating a negative outlook on my life and producing unnecessary stress in relationships? Is perfectionism leaving my self-esteem and self-worth to be determined by others? The problem with the perfectionist is they can never determine if what they've done is perfect until somebody else approves of it. And as most of you well know, and as research in social media shows, we can never get a unified agreement on anything from any group of people. So perfectionism is a very, very dangerous trap, but it sure does produce resistance in Spirit Gym that ultimately leads to enough pain to stimulate growth. Is my need to know an attempt to gain self-validation at the expense of gaining practical life experience and relaxing my mind enough to connect and truly live. And I want to bring up a key point if it wasn't obvious. It's our parental upbringing that exposes us to our initial programming with regard to the degree of intensity, how much we focus on what's wrong, how much striving towards perfectionism, and how important the need to know is that drives us. And sadly, as a guy who's been a therapist for almost 40 years, almost all of the beliefs and behaviors that lead to high levels of intensity, focusing on what's wrong, perfectionism, and the need to know are the direct product of religious programming. So now when it comes to personal and collective myths, we need to get clear about issues of God, as in Spirit Gym, unconditional love, God, and gods, or we're going to be very confused, as humanity currently is dangerously confused. Carl Jung once again said something very profound. He said, it is unclear whether our imago Dei, our image of deity, creates us, or if we create it. To be very clear, it means whatever your beliefs about God are cannot be distinguished from what creates you, or whether you are creating your God. Does God create you, or do you create God? The one thing I can tell you for sure is that when I track back where the beliefs that led to the behaviors that produced illness, pain, disease, sadness, and death came from, it's almost always someone's beliefs about God. And even an atheist has beliefs about God. Jung said regarding atheism, something must first be real before it can be rejected. Rumi said to experience God, you must become a heretic. And what he meant is you got to stop reading books. You got to stop believing about other people's ideas, and you must go on your own journey and experience God for yourself, or you will never know what God is. You will only have a brain full of ideas programmed into you by other people, which turns out to be exceedingly dangerous. But it sure does speed up growth in Spirit Gym. So what is God? Something I've researched very deeply. What I'm sharing here comes from an amazing set of books called Rivers of Life and Faiths of All Man by J.G.R. Forlong, who was a British general who traveled the world for his whole career researching people's beliefs about God, and produced this comprehensive two-volume set of probably nearly 1,000 or more pages in the late 1800s. So what is God? Humans originally thought that God was trees because they saw life growing and living in trees. Then they thought God was the lingam and the yoni, the sex organs, because whenever the lingam and the yoni got together, new life emerged. So they thought they must be God. Then God was worshipped as the serpent because people at that time noticed that the energies and manifestations of nature, such as rivers, moved in a serpentine pattern. So they saw that wherever this serpentine pattern was, life was, therefore that must be God. Then God was worshipped as fire because it produced light and has the power to transform, kill, and bring new life. Then the sun was worshipped as God, for humans realized that life as we know it cannot exist without the sun. Where are we today? What is your highest power? What I'm trying to point out here is that what we believe God is changes as we change. What we believe God is changes as we grow and as we learn. But fixed ideas about God are beliefs, and as I will show, they're very dangerous. So what is God, and God in Spirit Gym? God is source, unconditional love, that for which there is no other, zero, infinite. God is unknowable, but can be experienced. Why? Because to truly know God, you would have to become God. And in so doing, there would be no you to remember or share the experience. God, as it is commonly used in religion, represents the highest power in any belief system. All religions and isms are belief systems. Belief systems are systems, and they are closed. Belief blocks honest questioning. That inspires growth. It blocks honest questioning that inspires growth and spiritual evolution. Belief system conflicts underlie all wars. This is extremely important. Most people don't understand that by definition, a belief system is closed. I'll give you a simple example. How much Taoism or Shinto or Confucianism or Hinduism could you put in the Bible before Christians didn't know what Christianity was anymore? How much mystical metaphysics could you put in scientific materialism before we didn't know what scientific materialism was anymore? So belief systems are nice because they allow you to stop thinking and become unconscious, and they give you the false security that you know what's going on. But whenever you think you know what's going on, you stop questioning. And when you stop questioning, you stop exploring and you stop growing. A God is any conscious entity or being with the power to change its environment. You are a God. Now let's look at what love is. I meditated for years on this. And what Source told me and what my soul taught me is that love is consciousness becoming aware of itself. I was also taught that love is the flow of energy and information through empathic and compassionate connection to self and or other. My soul also taught me that love is not a word, it's a code. The L of love stands for life and desire, which carries a positive polarity. If we don't have the desire to live, well, we all know we can kill ourselves and end it. We only live when we have the desire to live. So desire carries a positive polarity. In an electric circuit, a positive pole lacks electrons, so it draws energy towards itself. Zero, O of love, is pure potential, source, unconditional love. VE is the scientific notation for volt electron, which is will. To the degree we desire, we will. Love is like a jet engine. The harder it sucks, desire, the harder it blows, will. Now, looking at Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants again, we see that within potential, source desires to know itself and dreams itself into existence, which produces the 4 quadrants. Desire, will, past, present, future. We come into life as a child and we live through what I refer to as sex and violence love. We're born out of an act of sex. And our childhood's often violent, and coming to know the physical plane can be violent because we don't yet know what gravity is. We don't yet know what fire is. We don't know what sharp things are. And we often assume we can trust everybody. But we learn through the pains and challenges and the growth opportunity of sex and violence love as we develop our sense of self, that there are conditions that we can create and agree upon to love with less pain and more harmony. So we grow from sex and violence love to the adolescent love of conditional love, and all contracts represent conditional love. If you hear the words, I love you if, I love you and, I love you but, you are hearing the words of a conditional lover. As we grow through conditional love, we can become a wise man or a wise woman and love empathetically and compassionately, which in my model is adult love. And we always have 3 choices. The optimal choice is the one that's best for everybody involved in any situation. The suboptimal choice is always the one that's best for us, but often causes pain on our dream team. And we also have the choice to do nothing. Doing nothing can be helpful if you need more information to make an effective decision. Doing nothing can be helpful if you're feeling that you're getting separated at the heart from somebody you love in an argument. It's better to call a timeout and say, let's return to this when we can stay connected at the heart. The worst choice we can make in the do nothing category is apathy. Apathy means to not care. Research in psychology shows that children raised by physically abusive and emotionally abusive and mentally abusive parents fare better than those raised by apathetic parents that simply do not care. So ultimately, we go from sex and violence love to conditional love, to empathetic and compassionate love, to having moments of union and realizing that we are unconditional love, and that is the domain of a mystic, a saint, or a sage. If we go backwards, as we saw in so many cases of COVID and the stress in the environment, then we narrow our conscious and lower our capacity and range of choices. But as we grow forward, we gain more expansive consciousness and more capacity to love and have empathy and compassion and to understand. Now in Spirit Gym, the magician, tarot number 1, represents the mind. The magician archetype is alive within you as your mind, which creates your personal spirit gym. The magician is the creator of the matrix of spirit gym, or existence itself. So the divine mind creates existence itself, or spirit gym as a whole, but our mind as co-creator creates the matrix within which we experience ourself. And the word matrix, matter, and mother are all synonyms of each other. The magician's tricks for conscious realization through the illusions of limitation, which are necessary, because if God is unconditional love, there's no way to know or recognize God without the creation of limitations. But since the truth is unconditional love, then the limitations are illusions, which is where the Hindu concept of Maya comes from. In tarot, the correlation is the wands. You see on the magician's table, the wand is the fire element, which relates to our use of power. The sword represents the air element or mind and relates to our seeking fame. The cup represents the water element and our need for love. And if our love is not healthy, or is codependent, or is sex and violence love, or even conditional love, it produces pain that stimulates growth. The coin represents the earth element, which relates to our challenges with the accumulation of and management of wealth. If you look carefully at your own life, you will see power, fame, love, and wealth are either used to set you free or to create pain and limitation and challenges in relationship. Nobody escapes them. The magician uses desire, intention, and manifestation to perform the 4 key tricks for growth in Spirit Gym, which is seeking power, fame, love, and wealth. To the degree that we are ignorant, attached, or avoidant of our responsibility to use our power, fame, love, and wealth in ways that are best for all, we lose freedom and create pain, resistance, and premature death in Spirit Gym. Loss of freedom, pain, and resistance stimulate awareness and conscious growth in Spirit Gym. Manjushri, who you see here, is a Buddhist god that represents discernment. Discerning, should I vaccinate or not? Should I invest in this drug or this investment in cleaning the oceans or other products that help people in more holistic ways? Should I punch this guy in the face for what he just said? Or should I have empathy that he is doing the best he can with the parenting he had and the level of consciousness that he has. That's discernment. We must be careful with the use of our discernment not to victimize yourself or others, not to sabotage ourselves or others, not to prostitute ourselves or others. And we must be careful not to remain a child when we could be engaging life as a contributing adult in a family, society, culture, or the world. So the question is, where am I using my own power to victimize myself or others, sabotage myself or others, prostitute myself or others, or remain a child when I could be engaging life and contributing as an adult in my family, society, or the world? And I think we all would agree, I suspect, that we need a lot more adults on deck right now. So what is my inner story, or the story I share with others regarding my power or powerlessness, my own wealth or lack of, my own love or lack thereof? Where am I codependent, or am I in a codependent relationship with persons, places, or things? What is an addiction but a codependent relationship with a person, place, or thing? How about my own fame and influence, or the need for external approval? How is that playing out in your own story? Is my story inspiring and supportive of myself and others, or am I creating greater limitation and resistance in Spirit Gym? When it comes to the understanding of unity, worship, and sympathetic resonance, if source is the source of everything and the sum of everything, then we're always in a relationship with source. Here we can see the implicate order represents the lover or the beloved, the infinite, the subjective aspect of ourselves, what we perceive to be the consciousness within ourselves, which is necessary for relationship. The lover, the subject, always has a beloved. I love myself, I love my dog, I love my friends, I love my car, I love my home, I love my life. Where we have infinity here, we have dimensions here. The subject sees the object or experiences the object. The I becomes related to the thou. I love you. I am the subject. You become the object of my devotion. So since God is pure potential or source, ringing the bell of zero, i.e. having a thought or belief, produces the harmonic resonance of one's intentions, thoughts, words, and deeds, which results in this: my God is made real, manifest via my love plus my word. Whatever you believe produces a thought form of your chosen, spoken, or lived God. What am I saying? The God of Hinduism is real. The God of Judaism is real. The God of Islam is real. The God of science is real. Whatever you believe, you come into resonance with source, which has infinite capacity to create, and infinite creative power, and infinite processing speed, and you manifest your reality with your thoughts because you're resonating with zero. When it comes to the effective use of mind, it's important to remember that the soul has three qualities. The soul's quality that sits at the top of the triangle is abiding, which is God consciousness, the witness. Here we have -1, which means to reflect. How did I do in my relationship today? How did I do as a therapist, a doctor, or a teacher? And we also, as a soul, represent. So we can choose how to represent ourselves and be conscious as to whether or not we're loving more or not. So a technique I developed to teach my students how to better manage their mind and teach their clients and patients how to do that is you simply use a coin. And if you have a negative thought, nobody loves me, let's say, then you have to ask, what is your dream? What is your intention? My dream is to love myself. Okay, so then we take the coin. If you have a negative thought, you hold the coin and look at it, state the negative thought, nobody loves me. State your dream out loud. My dream is I love myself. Then you flip it over and you make a positive statement, because you can't have a negative without a positive or a positive without a negative. So as soon as you make a negative statement about yourself or anything, you've automatically created a positive and vice versa. That's basic math. Now, if you cannot engage your potential to live that positive thought, for example, nobody loves me. What is my dream? I love myself. Then you flip the coin over. I love myself. If you can't buy into that, then you must return to the middle of the coin, which you see here. And that's pure potential, because it's not heads, it's not tails, it's not negative, it's not positive, it's unconditional, just like God. So you look at the middle of the coin and say, I have the potential to love myself, and I'm committed to working on that every day. Then you represent yourself in harmony with your positive thought or dream affirmative thought. And that's how you grow in Spirit Gym and learn to use your mind to create what you want instead of what you don't want. Now, in the principle of the four, and I'm having to leave a lot out, this book's going to be about 1,000 pages long. It's very comprehensive and deep. It's my magnum opus. But I'm giving you some key things that I thought would be important based on the issues of what are going on in the world today, and the concept that the conference that you're at is based on. To manage ourselves, we have to have four doctors. Dr. Happiness is the doctor that's in charge of our core values. Remember, if you don't have core values, you can't make an effective choice, because your yes has no value until you learn to say no. And without values, you don't know when to say yes or no. So Dr. Happiness is the symbol that says, what is happy making for me? And what am I willing to do each day to create happiness in my life, so I stay in touch with happiness and practice happy making instead of becoming codependent on people and drugs and external means to make me happy. And Dr. Happy must have clear values about movement. How much movement do I need to keep my body at baseline health? And what is my dream? Is my dream to climb mountains, play hockey, be a competitive kettlebell lifter? Once you have baseline fitness, then you have to work on your specific fitness goals. What are my values around food and hydration? That's a critical value to have clear today. And what are my values around rest, sleep, introspection, spiritual development, and managing myself with enough rest that I have an anabolic rebound or can recover from the stress of exercise and life? And Dr. Quiet deals with the inside of ourselves, our inner world. Dr. Happiness deals with the inside and the outside, but food and exercise are largely outside exercises. In my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, I show how to do work in exercises to show you how to cultivate more energy per unit of time than it costs to do the exercise. So the key thing to remember is, wherever you have a weak connection or weak degree of commitment to any one of these four doctors, that's where your weak link in your chain is. When enough stress comes, that's where you're going to break. COVID broke a lot of chains. Om really is the master code or sound of creation. As many of you know, Joseph Campbell describes that Om has a meaning. Ah means I awaken, which represents spring, the beginning of our life, or the beginning of a project, or the beginning of a relationship. U represents first I awaken, and then it represents I'm dreaming, because remember, God dreams existence, because existence is the product of something that comes before mind. Mind is after. God is unconditional. Mind is a duality. You don't have mind until you have something created. So, I awaken. Ooh, I'm dreaming. I'm living my dream, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I'm falling asleep. Means end of cycle, end of project, end of relationship, or end of a universe, whichever way you want to look at. Underscore means the end of a complete cycle. If you look at human physiology and life itself, you'll see the Om cycle nested in everything from particles to atoms to cells to hormones to breathing to the day-night cycle to the seasons, the year, all life itself, life of a planet, the life of a sun, and the life of a universe. So as I show in much greater detail, the Om cycle is the primordial cycle that exists within all cycles, and it describes the unfolding of life at every level. Native societies throughout antiquity came to the realization that there were 4 R's that were essential for sustainability, called the interdependency of all life. This is well described in Jeremy Lent's book, The Web of Meaning. The 4 R's we all need to be aware of is relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, and redistribution. We can't survive without relationships. We can't survive without taking responsibility for what we create. If we don't have reciprocity, then everything becomes imbalanced, which we're starting to see more and more of in the world as the global elite create a bigger and bigger gap between the rich and the poor. And we're also seeing the hoarding and overaccumulation of resources at the expense of some 2 to 4 billion people on the planet, depending on how you want to measure it. So when we do these kinds of things, we create more resistance in Spirit Gym. Now, the principle of the 5 in Spirit Gym means getting clear on how much time, energy, willingness, finances, and resource availability you have to create your own program. To help my patients and my clients in my career, I created a formula because many people just have a hard time getting almost anything done for a variety of reasons, many of which I've just discussed. So I created the 1-4-100 formula. And the 1-4-100 formula says, if you commit yourself to just 1% improvement each day with any one of your 4 doctors, within 100 days, you will be 100% improved. And if you were willing to improve 1% a day on each of your 4 doctors, quiet, diet, happiness, and movement, within 100 days, you would have a 400% improvement in the quality of your life. And I created this formula to help people realize it's the small steps we take each day. But many people talk themselves out of managing themselves better or growing or getting to the gym or eating better food or drinking quality water or drinking more water or getting more sleep because they think it's too hard. But in reality, a little bit of improvement, just 1% a day, small realistic steps taken daily, reduces control fatigue, decreasing the likelihood of non-completion. Control fatigue is a term created by Chip and Stan Heath, or shared in their book on change. And what the research shows is that the more things we try to control, the worse we do at trying to control any of them because we get fatigued. Many mothers, especially single mothers, can tell you all about control fatigue. Talk to an air traffic controller who's got to manage many incoming and outgoing flights all day, and you'll see why it's very important not to let them work too much because they can't keep track of things. And many of us in our lives got so busy we start forgetting things and we get control fatigue. So if you take small realistic steps and you get clear on which doctor you need to develop more consciousness in and more commitment in, then what happens is you reduce the likelihood of control fatigue, and you are more likely to participate more fully in your own life and the lives of others, because you can't love anyone else better than you can love yourself. So as you can see in my diagram, a habit so small that you can't fall. 1% is not too much to ask for. Your awesome habit or your awesome new self is over here. And as Lao Tzu tells us, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think today, in the situation the world is in, it looks like it's such a daunting situation. But if we all keep just waiting for the other guy to do something about it, or waiting for the government to do something about it, well, we're putting ourselves in grave danger. But if we each say, what is it I can do out of the love of my heart because I enjoy doing it, and we do a little bit each day, whether it be singing the truth, dancing the truth, gardening the truth, farming the truth, manufacturing truth, like sustainable business practices, or being an honest politician and sharing a little bit of truth each day. There's many ways that we can all contribute. And when you get about 7 billion people doing a little bit each day, it turns out to be a hell of a lot each day. The analogy I give people in my classes is, look, if there's 7 billion people on the planet, and we know that there's water shortages, not only now, but much worse coming, and we each decided to flush the toilet one less time a day, well, the average flush of a toilet is about 3 to 5 gallons. So if we stick with 3 gallons, if we each flush the toilet one less time a day, that's 21 billion gallons of water. Well, most people don't realize that if we each just do a little bit, we can all go a long way, because 21 billion gallons of water a day is a hell of a lot of water. And within no time, we could redistribute that water around the world, and the 2 billion people that don't have enough water to drink or food to eat could be well supported, and we could all feel good about that. And I must say, Jim Gale is doing a very good job at helping us all create sustainable food and farming practices that we need now. So what does it look like when you apply these principles? This is my client, Jason Picard. I've got a great podcast with him. It's episode 192, Jason Picard, Finding Soul. He's one of many, many cases, and Czech professionals all over the world have a long string of such cases. But Jason used to weigh over 300 pounds. He was one of the most successful stockbrokers in the world. He was one of the top 30 traders in the world by the time he was 30. But he was falling apart, and he couldn't find joy in all of his success and meaning in life. So through the love of Great Spirit, he found his way to me through a person that was training him, but knew that he was in over his head, and directed him to me. And we've been working together for 10 years, and he's one of the most amazing human beings I know. But you can see that Jason made quite a radical transition, and him and I have done a tremendous amount of healing work together. And the principles that I'm sharing here are exactly how I coach my clients, teach my students, and how I live. And I can say that they've been the great work of love, and have produced a lot of freedom for me and for my clients and for my patients. And it's my dream that we do that for each other. Whenever we reach a new stage of development, we need to be aware of our awareness. What is my dream, and has it changed? If our dream changes, then our goals change, and we need to make sure that our values are supportive of our new dream, because as we grow, sometimes we need to change our values. We need to update our values. For example, you might go from a hardcore Orthodox religious person to someone who practices world religion, which could change your values. You could go from somebody who exercises on machines to realizing that functional exercise is much more healthy, and you need to change your values. We also need to be clear of who's on our dream team at each stage of our life, because we don't know who we're working with. We don't know how to support them, and they don't know how to support us effectively. We have to look at our 4-doctor balance. Do we need to update our core values? And we need to look at the themes of each of the chakras, which are essentially safety, the use of our libido or life force energy, our personal power and self-will, our capacity to give and receive love, our capacity to communicate and express our creativity effectively, and to gain insight and look into issues and look into ourselves, and ultimately to have a greater degree of intuitive insight and to explore our beliefs about what source is, because that's what we're going to confront when we die. So as we grow, we need to look into these categories of our living philosophy and our psychology, or as the environment changes, if we don't change, we can no longer effectively interface with the environment. We've got to evaluate our habits and ask, are they dream affirmative or are they dream negating? And we must remember that the qualities of the soul are to abide. If we don't practice abiding or witnessing, we get trapped in our mind, and Spirit Gym can be quite a bitch. If we witness and can discern more effectively, and we're clear about our dream and have values, then we can use the power of our mind to create for ourselves and to create in relationships and to create more harmony and beauty in the world. So we always have to reflect. We need to look back and say, does our past equal the future? Well, if that's a good thing, it's okay. If you've been eating well, caring for yourself, living and loving fully, and your life is going well, then it's good to continue the habit. But if we find that we look back in reflection and that we weren't living and loving fully, and that we've been losing friendships and relationships and going through divorces and losing jobs, then our reflection can help us decide how we want to represent ourselves and get clear on who we choose to be in the moment or moving forward. So bringing it to a close, welcome to the journey we all share in Spirit Gym. This quote from St. Bernard from Aldous Huxley's book, The Perennial Philosophy, I think is one of the most enlightened quotes I've ever read. And it's quite impressive for a man that was a Christian saint, because it shows just how beyond the Bible he was. He says, "For my part, I think the chief reason which prompted the invisible God to become visible in the flesh and to hold converse with men was to lead carnal men, who are only able to love carnally, to the healthful love of his flesh, and afterwards, little by little, to spiritual love." So if you look at the themes of our chakras, the first 3 chakras are all about the self, the body, the animal aspects of ourselves and our instincts and our biological urges, or the carnal aspects of ourselves. The heart is when we get into understanding relationships, or we evolve our consciousness from I-oriented to we-oriented. And that's where we become more rational and we think before we do. We don't just behave like a dog that humps everything. So the heart integrates the upper chakras with the lower chakras. I call the bottom 3 the animal chakras, the top 3 the angelic chakras. And then we have the 5th, which is our creative self-expression, 6th, our capacity for inner vision and insight, 7th, intuition, and a deeper look at God, which up here you're getting into expressing for and creating for and becoming one with the all. So spiritually, we grow in consciousness from I-centric orientation to we-centric orientation, to empathy and compassion, love for, and interest in supporting the all. And that's what Spirit Gym is all about, is making that journey from I to we to all, or from the head to the heart, so that we're an integrated human being and contribute to helping make life more beautiful for all living beings now and in the future. So thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to receive early notification of Spirit Gym's release and special bonuses, you can scan that QR code. You can just take a picture of it with your iPhone, and I think it still works. If we have time,
Okay.
yeah, lost you for a second. Are we doing any questions, or we're going to call it there? I think I finished a little bit early. Goodbye, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Hope you found the common sense in it. Look forward to sharing a lot more with you. Glad you're there at the conference. Thank you, Sergi, for inviting me. Lots of love to all of you. A whole great spirit. We are safe. We are home. We are whole.
Amazing. Let's let Paul Chek hear it. What an amazing guy.